Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to the Social Jello with Angelo podcast, Conversations with a Back Fist. I'm here. Oh, now I don't even know who I'm here with. See, I thought I was here with George. And George, what's your full name, George?
My name is Robert Sanders, but George is just a nickname I got actually playing high school football. I think I was wearing a Georgetown shirt, and the coach thought that was my name, so he was calling me George T. And it was the first day of school, and everyone thought that was my name, and it's been a nickname ever since. And then I took it with me to Capoeira.
All right, so people know you as George, and as the title of this podcast is all about capoeira. There's some questions that will come up later. How effective is it? What's the history behind it? Does it work in MMA? Now, why am I doing this? Earlier, I made a YouTube video because a guest canceled, and whenever a guest does that, I'll make a quick tutorial about someone who asked me. So I do Kaji Kembo for all you capoeira people watching. Kaji Kembo is a martial art that came out of Hawaii and is now practiced and has variations like Hawaiian Kempo, people like Chuck Liddell and Tixeria, and some other big people in the UFC practice this type of martial art. So I don't come from a capoeira background. That's the whole point I'm trying to come at. I don't come from a capoeira background. But in Kaji Kembo, we're very free to do pretty much whatever the fuck we feel like. Not, yeah, pretty free. Like once you get your black belt, you have the core curriculum, but then as far as how we approach it, how we practice, we're allowed to practice and do whatever we want. So I had a Kaji Kembo student contact me because I put a quick video on Instagram of me doing a jab straight spinning hook kick where I place my hand down for balance for it. And he saw me do this kick and he's like, I really want you to do that. Can you make a tutorial for it? So I made a tutorial for it, and I couldn't do this tutorial without mentioning capoeira because when I first saw it, we're really going down the rabbit hole here. I saw it in a Jet Li movie called Shaolin. That's where I first saw it. And I later, when I was looking for it, this is pre-internet, so there was internet, but it wasn't as good as what is. I saw the term "I'm older than Google" on the internet today, and it kind of hit me hard. So yeah, I'm older than Google. And
Yep.
so a little later in my history and kind of reading books, I actually came across capoeira in a video game. If I have to be really honest about myself, capoeira that's Tekken. Tekken.
Second.
Tekken is where capoeira came up. What the hell is this guy doing? It's capoeira. So then it made me look for books on capoeira and stuff. So either way, I started doing that kick back then, but then I was like, oh, capoeira has this kick. They put their hand down. So I made the video, called it the Brazilian hook kick, because I didn't know the term for it, and forgot that a good friend of mine, Eric Coleman, who's also a Kaji Kempo practitioner, also practices capoeira. And he immediately went into my DMs and started trolling me about how I did it wrong. That's the wrong name of the kick. I think I called it a gancho, and it's not a gancho. And he told me the real name, which I can't pronounce right now. I'll let you go into that right now in a sec.
Yeah.
But that's how we ended up here. Eric referred me over to George, and so now I'll talk all about capoeira. So I'm gonna shut the fuck up. I'm gonna hand over this. We'll start off with what's it called? What's that kick called? We'll start with that.
Okay, so it could be a different name depending what school you're at, but our school is called Mea Lua,
Okay.
which means like half moon. So you can see that circular kick kind of looks like a half moon. But different schools call it different names. But Mea Lua, and that probably, I mean, that was a bold video to make because it's a challenging kick and it takes a long time to learn that kick. Just it's one of the hardest kicks. Um, yeah, but I'm not, since we're gonna later we'll talk about MMA, but that is probably one of you would have to have a lot of practice trying to incorporate that into MMA or some sort of fighting. Um, but basically, So like my journey in capoeira was I started in 1995, and I was into music at the time. I was in this West African drumming class in San Jose, and it was this girl's senior project, and she had a capoeira show that night. She had some people come to her. It was like her senior project, so she was doing all this music, and so that's where I first saw capoeira. And my roommates had told me about it. They were all like into breakdancing and martial arts. But actually, one of them used to train with Eric Kajikembo, and these guys, they were just, all into martial arts. So they kind of like told me about it beforehand because I was telling them, I was like, there's going to be a capoeira group there. And that's where I met my teacher. And he happened to be teaching in my hometown of Berkeley. So that summer when I went home from San Jose, I started training. And I didn't really know what I was getting into at first. So it was kind of just a nice experience, because I just thought it was an interesting art form, and I really liked the music. Excuse me. So I started training that summer, and then my roommate did too, Marquis. And then like a month later, they had this big event at the school, and this is like when I was like very very new to it. And before this event, we had been watching this movie called Only the Strong, which it's a good capoeira movie. I'll send you the link. I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's like it was at Blockbuster back when there was a Blockbuster. Like you could rent it on VHS, and it was just a movie about capoeira with what's the guy's name? John DeCostos. He's like a
Yeah,
martial
Mark Dacascos, and he's
Mark
actually
DeCostos. Sorry, yeah.
he's also a Kaji Kempo guy.
Oh yeah, so he was like the star of the movie, and then he had some capoeiristas in the movie with him, and these guys lived in like L.A. and one of them lived in Florida at the time. But that weekend when they had the event, they were all at our school for the event, and so we were just there because normally in a capoeira school you make a circle, and people are playing music and playing capoeira in the circle. So my roommate and I are sitting there clapping and just looking. We're like, I think that's the guy from the movie, And sure enough, it was. And I mean, the stuff that they're doing was just mind blowing. So like, we got like this great. Oh, here comes somebody. This great firsthand experience. Oh, there we go. There it is. There it is. Yeah.
There it
Uh,
is. There it is. It looks like a hip hop. You got
Yeah, so this
hip.
it's very Hollywood style
Oh,
capoeira move.
John Claude Van Damme. Holy
Is he?
crap!
And then
Oh no, that's not John Claude Van Damme. That's Mark
no,
Dacascos. Mark
yeah, it's Mr.
Dacascos had a.
Costas.
This,
That guy looks
I
the other guy looks
mistook him
like
for
him a little.
when he was young. I mistook him for John Claude Van Damme.
So we back then, there was no internet, so this was what we studied, to like see moves and stuff. Um, there's probably a highlight at the end. Um, let's see, maybe.
Yeah, it's
This
it's a
so
trailer.
anyway,
It's a
it's
trailer.
it's
Either way.
it's like it's worth watching. But I mean, now with the internet, it's crazy because my group is from Rio de Janeiro, and I mean, I see videos from the street down there. People playing capoeira, and like it was like in the '90s, it was really hard to even find a DVD or a video or anything. So it was still pretty new, but I'm from the Bay Area, and capoeira was pretty big here in the '90s. Like actually a lot of teachers that came, and now it's even bigger. Um, but basically, so I started training, and I trained for about 15 years, and after about 10 years or so, I was teaching early on, but after about 10 years, I started having my own class, but it was under the supervision of Mestre Besola. So Mestre Besola is my teacher, and he's a native of Rio de Janeiro, and he was quite an amazing capoeirista. He's still around. He's lives in the Bay Area still, but he was an amazing teacher to have. And so where I lived in Berkeley, there was a lot of capoeira schools like Berkeley and Oakland. So there was a really nice scene where you could go play people from other schools. I think just in our area alone, there was like at least 5 schools, and it still is that way today. There's newer teachers and new studios, and and bringing capoeira from Brazil to start a studio, I'm sure like starting a studio is a big deal. Like it's super hard financially and to get a spot and have martial arts insurance and all that. So our class was at a really simple community center, and yeah, we trained there for a while. And so let's see. So what is capoeira? So capoeira is it's an Afro-Brazilian martial art. Um, it's pretty old, so it has a history that's not well documented because there's a big debate in capoeira, like did capoeira come from Africa or did it come from Brazil? And I would think most people believe that its roots are in Africa and it developed in Brazil. So when the Portuguese brought people from the Angola area of Africa over to Brazil, um, they brought with them some of their, their culture. And um, I'm not going to get too far into the history. I'll just tell you, like pretty much what you'd see if you came to a capoeira school. So what you'd expect. Well, let's say a capoeira circle. So capoeira is played in a circle. It's called a roda. And at the beginning of the circle, the mouth of the circle, there's instruments. Some of them are hanging behind me. There's a tambourine that's called the pandeiro right here. um, Got a double bell, a unique instrument called the beating bow. And all these instruments play a certain rhythm that's controlled by the beating bow. So the beating bow kind of sets the time of the beat, and usually it's a similar beat um, that we're playing to the rhythm, um, and then there's singing, and it's in a call and response format. So whoever's playing the beating bow leads a song, and the people in the circle respond and they clap to the rhythm. Um, and then 2 people would go into the circle. Usually they kneel down in front of the instruments and shake hands. That's kind of like the salute. You'd shake hands. When you shake hands, though, as soon as you shake hands, the game begins, and we call it a game, not a fight or a match. It's called a game. So the 2 people shake hands. There we go. There's the beating bow, and there's the drum right there, the atabaki, pandeiro. Um, and so you shake hands before you go in, and then you do some sort of roll, and there like a cartwheel's a common way to go in. And you never, even though people like they can go any direction, but really you're always keeping track of where the person you're playing with is at in the circle. Um, the movements, I would say the foundation is called Ginga. So Ginga is a move that looks like a floating horse stance and a front stance. So you might see it in clips and stuff where it looks like they're going side to side. And that's basically like a front stance, horse stance, front stance. Um, and then all your movements come out of that. Um, when you're doing Jenga, you can go to either side. It's not like you have to go right to left. Like you could like wait on one side and come back. So it's kind of like you're still trying to find your opening and your angle. There you go. To bring it back to MMA, like you're still trying to find a good angle with your Jenga. And so you can see he's going side to side. Now you don't have to keep going side to side. Sometimes people think like you have to keep going back and forth, but no, there's all these different steps that mix in with the Ginga. Um, and then I would say the movements, I would describe them as there's high kicks, there's straight kicks and circular kicks. So there we have like a front push kick. It's called the bensao. Roundhouses, we call it martello. Um, Crescent kicks, and then the meia-lua, the spinning kick, or a high spinning kick, where you don't put your hands on the ground. Um, and then there's the floor movements, which are different rolls that you do. So you would do like a floor roll. It's called the negativa. That's when you basically go down, and that would be to escape a kick, and then you'd roll out of the way, and you can throw kicks from the ground. So, and from the ground, there could be straight kicks or circular kicks as well. And then I would say the third aspect of the game is like a gymnastics types moves. So, like a cartwheel or a handstand, back flips, back handsprings, like hand spins. You don't necessarily have to do all the fancy moves because you like in videos you'll see people doing back flips and back handsprings, but really you don't have to do all that. It is a part of it. It does make it exciting, but um, it's not necessarily a requirement to have a good capoeira game. Um,
So from the sounds of it, I guess my first question, because I come from a different system, and a lot of people that listen to this, I guess I don't know. I have from, or let's just say I come from a system of belts. Is there like a belt system of some kind in
oh
capoeira or
yeah,
no?
yeah. Here, so right behind me here, these are some of my old belts. They're like ropes. It's called a cord, capoeira cord. Um, my current belt is a blue cord, but it starts in our school. It starts green, and then you mix green and yellow, yellow, yellow and blue, and then blue is in our school is like a graduated student, and then after that is when you start getting into the mestre belts. So before a mestre, it's called contramestre, and that's all three. These are the colors of the Brazilian flag. So um, in our school, it'd be green, yellow, and blue, and then your mestre belts are mixed with white. So like green and white is first, like the first level mestre. Then after about 10 years, yellow and white. Then after 10 more years, blue and white, and then finally white. But different capoeira schools, most of them use a system similar to this, but some other schools use different colors too, like like red, purple, brown, orange. Um, and then some schools don't even use belts. So it kind of depends where you're training.
Is capoeira Brazil's official martial art?
Well, I mean, jujitsu probably, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I don't even know if I don't know if they have an official martial art, but but definitely like the two most popular ones would probably be jiu-jitsu and capoeira. And now, like, if you go down there now, everyone cross trains. Like, the guys do both a lot of the time, and they mix in other stuff too, like boxing. I mean, it's ever since UFC exploded, there's a lot of cross training going on. But there's people from our group that definitely teach or like take jujitsu or teach jujitsu or teach boxing. So there's a lot of cross training.
Yeah, because I was gonna say when I look up, if I Google Brazil's official martial art, it's like the first one that comes up. And
Okay.
historically, I'm not a historian here, but I am gonna say that I was listening to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu podcast with Stefan Kesting, and he was interviewing his historian who wrote a thesis on Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And what he was saying was that at one point in Brazil, they had one of those like carnival catch wrestling type of matches between a Brazilian guy, a capoeira player, and a jiu-jitsu player. And I guess jiu-jitsu wasn't on its game that day, and the guy got kicked. And they were like, they had this match supposedly to figure out what's going to be like the
Okay.
official. They said they taunted it as official. I don't know if it's official or not, but he was saying this match did kind of springboard capoeira into the main light because there was a lot of key politicians there at that event, and they still look back at that as one of the reasons Brazilian jiu-jitsu didn't become as popular sooner. Because right, but like I said earlier, when you think about Brazilian jiu-jitsu's history, it really did not become popular in the martial arts world till UFC 1, but it was around way before that. And now, past all that, it's a lot more popular because of the UFC, really. So like, why this whole time before that, if I thought about a Brazilian martial art, I wouldn't be thinking. Like I said, I'm older than Google. I wouldn't be thinking Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I would actually be thinking Capoeira up until
Yeah.
later in my life.
Well, it's definitely distinctly Brazilian, that's its birthplace, and it's funny, I think I actually have heard a story similar from my teacher about, uh, like, the guy jujitsu and capoeira fighting together, and he told me a funny story too. I'm not gonna really go into it, but I do remember hearing something like that, um, one night, like, after capoeira class, you you don't go home, you stay and just keep talking, and that's what's great about it. Um, yeah, capoeira is uniquely Brazilian, that's for sure.
And so now, with that being said, we kind of, it's not that's I'm trying to say not official, unofficial. We're avoiding these words because anybody who's, and I said this earlier, I'm not a martial arts historian. There are people that know much more about this than I do. But just surface value, as of right now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu worldwide recognized, like off the bat. Um, I can grab people that have very minimal knowledge in martial arts, and if I start talking about the martial arts, they'll immediately bring up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mostly because of how its effectiveness in MMA and the UFC using that as a, well, actually it's the other way around. The UFC didn't use that to make Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu famous. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu used the UFC to make themselves famous, because that's history. I'm not an official
Yeah.
historian, but that's easy history. UFC 1 was put together by the Gracies to pretty much showcase Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That was their main goal. It was their debut, if you will. It was their world debut in the U.S. They were around before that doing stuff in Japan, but in the U.S. that was the world debut. So really, historically speaking, people always get that confused. Like, oh, they used, the UFC, it was because of that, but it's actually the way around. The UFC was created to showcase Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and later evolved out of that and see what it is now, a giant franchise and whatnot. So that being said, modern day now in the MMA, how is capoeira working its way in? But before you answer that question, movie magic, Eric Coleman has come here to join us.
What's up, man?
He is materialized in this show.
Popped in.
As I mentioned earlier, Eric was the one who referred me over to George. I already talked about how he trolled me, so that's already we got that all the way. And
You're talking about the Puerto Rican hook kick.
The Puerto Rican hook kick. Yeah, I have to retitle that video from Brazilian hook kick to the Puerto Rican hook kick. So, all right.
Man,
What's up, man? What's up, George? How you doing? I didn't
what's up,
say hi to
man?
you.
Pretty good, man. I'm doing good. Yeah,
Good.
I was just training a little capoeira yesterday too in my garage here. I do like 15 minutes, maybe like 3 times a week, just to keep the joints going. Because it is.
Listen, that's about 15 minutes more than what I do. So you got me beat. So what are you guys talking about?
Oh,
Don't let me interrupt.
so yeah, George, we just asked where is Capoeira now in modern day MMA? And then I'm just gonna let George go on this one. He had some stuff he was saying.
Yeah, so I saw Conor McGregor a while back trying to work on the Mealua, the Puerto Rican hook kick. The the Braz- okay, for real, the Mealua. He was trying to do the spinning. It's like a spinning heel kick. I would describe it as you hit with your heel. I've been hit in the head with one of those too by a guy who was 6'5", and dang, man, he rocked me.
Was
It
it
did
me?
not feel good. It wasn't. No, you're bigger than 6'5". I already know that. So yeah, this was Russell. But anyway, McGregor was like trying to train it for a while, and I guess my criticism of that was that he was training with this guy from Israel, Ideal Portal or something like that, who was kind of like a movement guy. And I just was puzzled because I thought Connor was like UFC, so I thought he'd go down to Brazil because there was all these shots of him in Brazil, and I was like, he's down there, go to a capoeira school, and train with someone. And there's guys in Rio too that I think he was in Rio that already are doing like mixing in capoeira and MMA.
Like,
So
I feel like I saw that video, and he did
yeah,
a horrible Jenga. That's
yeah,
what I remember.
and
Oh, there it is.
And I mean, the other criticism, I mean, respect to Conor McGregor, but the other criticism was that that's such a hard kick to just try and throw in. I mean, I would only consider that if I did capoeira. Like he would need to learn capoeira, and or anyone really, I think would need to learn capoeira to actually use it in MMA. Like it's such a hard kick to just try and throw in there because when you do the kick you already know where you're vulnerable and like how you need to recover from it after you do it, and where you can go after because you learn all that in capoeira, like what your next move is going to be or how to escape a counterattack that's going to come after you throw that kick.
I
Because
think. Oh,
go
one
ahead.
thing real quick. What you just said made sense, but I think that in a lot of martial arts, capoeira is probably the hardest one to make. It's the hardest one I think to make work in terms of understanding body mechanics. But once you get the body mechanics down, like I don't know if we had this conversation before, um, but once you get the body mechanics down, and once I understood the body mechanics of it, because like when I started capoeira, I was already a black belt, right? And I already knew some like how to throw kicks. I was a black belt, and I was also Thai fighting at the time, so I was already like wasn't scared to get hit, wasn't scared to throw a kick or anything. But I didn't understand the the movements. And remember, George, when we were in, we would go into the gym at San Jose State. Uh, we were always trying to understand and get an understanding of like the conversation that was supposed to be happening. That was how we were trying to understand it. Was that there was a actual conversation and the actual circles and how those circles work. So once we started to break that down, it became a lot more um easy for us to play and to not try and like take each other's heads off because I
Mhm.
remember Bezola, the biggest thing he would tell me, he would ask me if I was getting ready for a fight before we played capoeira, and he would be like, "Are you getting ready for a fight? Because if you are,
Oh wow.
I don't want to play right now. 'Cause you get too aggressive." I'm like, okay, well, stop kicking me. So, but yeah, that people would ask me like while I was fighting, like if capoeira was reasonable for a fight, and I would tell them anything is reasonable for a fight if you know what you're doing and know how to use it. If you just started 2 days ago and you're not gonna do a AU in the middle of a in the middle of a fight. AU is a handstand like Conor McGregor just did and had his head. I mean, was facing the wrong direction. You're not gonna do that in the middle of a fight. That's not like that's an escape or that's something. So with all things, you need to take it with a grain of salt and be like, oh, okay, this is this part and this is that part, and understand violence. And Angelo, like in sparring or anything, or in jujitsu or anything like that, you if you were trying to do something and you just started, just imagine a white belt in jujitsu going out picking fights and saying, "Oh, jujitsu doesn't work," right? And
I mean,
so,
like if someone to easily break this down, no matter how good someone may have, even a wrestler coming from a wrestling background, no matter how much natural ability you do, trying to learn the triangle choke, and everybody wants to learn it. I want to learn the
right,
triangle choke. On that first day, you are not gonna learn the
no,
triangle choke. You can spend 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours with a very good instructor, much better than me, and you still will not be able to do the triangle
right.
choke. Even against another white belt, it's just not gonna happen.
So yeah, yeah, and I think that's the thing with MMA too. Even if those people are like really good or whatever, it's like all the MMA stuff that I've ever seen somebody do capoeira, they'll do like two jingas and then they'll throw a kick and then they'll go back to something. So I think incorporating it is one thing, but actually doing like consistently doing unless you're Latif. Like, like I've seen Latif beat some people down. So you would have to be that good to be like, oh, I'm going to use specifically just capoeira in a fight. So
Well, and yeah, and I mean, so maybe I'll just explain some of the weapons of capoeira that we haven't really talked about yet too. So the sweeps are one thing that are really effective in capoeira that people underestimate. Sweeps, elbows, and headbutts are kind of like the real weapons. The kicks are a lot of times setups for the sweeps. Like there's a lot of trickery involved too in the game. So trying to get the person off balance, and that's where like the Mealua comes in. You have their head over here, and then you throw the Mealua so it catches them like when they're ducking the wrong way, like they'll duck right into it or something. Um, so there's a lot of off balance, but I think the sweeps are probably like some of the best weapons in capoeira. The bensal kick, push kick, obviously that's a great one in a roundhouse. Um, and again, roundhouse they will try and use it like to get the person, um, and going the wrong direction and catch them, or do a sweep and a roundhouse. That's a great capoeira combo. It's like you do a sweep on their like one of their planting legs, and as they're slipping, you crack them with a roundhouse. So it's kind of like they fall one way and then get knocked back the other way. A lot of misdirection. Um, and as far as Mealua, I don't know tell me what you think of this, Eric. I think Mealua is a good counterattack move that you would like throw from the back leg. So like you could catch someone at the wrong angle possibly um, to throw a Mealua. Like I like to throw it, I would say after like a straight kick, I'll put my kick in and pull it out. And as the person's coming in, throw the Mealua.
I always
Um,
thought it was most effective as an escape.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
Because your head
just
disappears.
yeah, so you're just getting away from, even if you were falling away from a kick, and then so again, when I started to understand capoeira is when I started to realize that it was all body mechanics, and you you any martial arts any martial arts that you've been in, and Angelo, you can kind of attest to this, is that you might throw something one way, and the next school, the next style will throw something just a slight variation of that same thing, and call it one thing or another, but it's all like your legs only go one way, and everybody's legs only go one way. That guy just
Yeah.
didn't know what to do
Well,
there.
see, on that one, I've seen in a lot of the clips I see online, it's the second one that gets them. You know, they
Yeah,
think
because
they
they're
don't
bigger.
realize there's one in the that can just they'll just like spin all day. You know, it could be three. Um, and I think so timing's a good thing that you learn in capoeira with the Jenga. Because the Jenga is not just side to side. It's like you can go back, you can come in, you can like switch like you do in Muay Thai, you know, like a switch stance. There's all these different ways that you can mix up the Jenga. I remember our teacher, Mestre Besola, was always talking about like being on the line where you can hit them and they can't hit you. Um, and it's funny because then I heard that later on when I started doing Wing Chun, and I was like, oh, I've heard this before. But just doing it upside down, doing cartwheels and stuff, you know. So um, Shapa is another good kick, which is basically it's like Mealua, but instead of hitting with the heel, it's a push kick.
It's a back kick. That's what it is basically.
Yeah, and I've been lifted off. Besola lifted me off the ground on that one. I felt the power. That thing, that is a strong kick. I ran into one of those.
So I mean, all these kicks and all these kicks, all these things are all existent in martial arts already. Like they are all like I said, everything that we do in Kaji Kimbo is quick kick wise. There's a lot of kicks that are just there and the same thing. So I mean, right, side kick. So we do a crescent kick and they call it what do they call it, crescent kick? Can't even think of the
Oh,
name.
Armada Inversa or
Yeah, Armada.
the hook kick,
Yeah.
Espadon.
So it's once you realize that, then it becomes how do I make this work and how do I make this sing and how do we have this conversation like we would always talk about. Um, and the conversation like in capoeira, like when you playing capoeira in the hoda, you don't like there's deception and then there is trying to go after somebody and there is also just kind of playing around and saying I could have kicked you but I don't want to kick you, that kind of thing. And once like when I came into it, I was coming from Kaji Kimbo and we are let's go, let's fight. I'm gonna hit you and you gonna hit me and we're gonna see who's who and who's what. And that wasn't necessarily the case with capoeira. It was more of it was a game, and it was more of like the cultural aspect of it. Of we're not here to try and knock each other's blocks off. But I will say that Besola, our instructor, used to stop class. Like we would be in the middle of doing like these sequences, and he would look at me and all of a sudden just jump on me and be like, I'm gonna fight you right now because I was the biggest person in that classroom. And he was like from the streets of Rio and wants to be rough and tumble with everybody. But he couldn't do it with all the little dainty people that were in the class. So I was cool with that though, because I was like, this is in my wheelhouse. We could do this all day. And so it was I don't even know if you were there then, George, because that was in Palo Alto.
Oh, I remember hearing about it, but I was at some of those classes. But I think I remember you told me it's like, yeah, me and Besola, we were wrestling for like 30 minutes.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Oh
The
wait,
class is just looking
didn't
like
you wait? Who got kicked through the door?
that was
Did,
me. That was so that
I was
story.
not there.
No, you weren't there for that one.
No.
So we were playing. We were in the Hoda, and this was probably a year into me playing capoeira. And like I said, at the time, I was a black belt already. I had already fought like several Thai fights, and I was being a little timid because I was still kind of trying to figure out everything. And speaking of that shopper, it was a shopper that did it. He
Oh
he
God.
went down and hit me with a shopper, which is basically almost like a back kick on the ground with your hands on the ground. And so he kicked me through these double doors. And just imagine it was like a scene from a movie. He kicked me through these double doors and it was like dark in the room. And he hurt my pride. And I was like, nope, you're not about to just do me like this. So I went out, like I got kicked out doing the Jenga. I came back in with a tie stance and he tried to do something. I stepped back and I leg kicked him as hard as I possibly could.
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, "You're not about to. We are not gonna do this." I was like, "Okay, okay. I'm gonna show you. You've been doing capoeira your entire life. I'm gonna show you what I know." So, and that's after that was when he was like, "Are you fighting? Are you getting ready for a fight? Because I don't want to fight you no more." So,
Wow.
so that was yeah, that was interesting. I was like, you might know capoeira, but I'm not defenseless up here. So we gonna see. We gonna see.
And I mean, that's just one of many stories. I mean, he like one time there's this is a crazy kick. It's like a front flip, but a kick. It's like a cartwheel, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a cartwheel and you flip,
It's
and
like an
you're
axe kick.
comes down like an like an axe kick. And I saw him catch this dude who was 6'5", like 250, right in the back of his head, and like he was just out, that quick, and then we just dragged him out of the circle by his like wrists, and he just like was laying on the side for a minute. I mean, he just needed a minute, but dang, he could fly across the circle like that. So he could, like, it was like a distance kick. He could just flip and time it so he'd land right the right time. Um, and he had a lot of control too. So he had this move, like if you there's so many like subtle lessons. I was doing my jingle with my mouth open because I was tired, and he would do this thing. It's so nasty, where he'd kick, but he'd just put his toe in your mouth, so you get like dirt or like floor dirt and stuff, and like go off choking. And I mean, and it was just to like mess with you in a friendly way, but like your mouth's wide open, and he had that much
Never had
control
that
that he
happen.
could do it. You
We
did
would
that?
we would we would really be fighting if that happened.
Oh
But you
god,
know, put your
you
toe in
did
my
that to
mouth.
do one day. Dang.
It's not gonna happen today. No,
Oh man.
that's a violation. I
Well, and
cannot
I
imagine.
got hit with it's called Meia de Compasso, the flip kick. I got hit
Yeah.
in the kidney with that,
Ugh.
and, that definitely sent me out of the circle. I never been hit like that before. I never had a kidney shot. That was my first kidney shot, and it was a heel to the kidney. And I tried to do that move on him one day, and he blocked me and dislocated my shoulder. So it was getting rowdy at the capoeira school, and I think actually that's kind of an interesting thing. Capoeira comes from Brazil, where it's like kind of like no rules to, like trying to make your studio here in California, where there's insurance, and you know he used to have this funny thing he'd say. He's like, "Did you sign the waiver?" You know, but I will say though, I learned a lot by playing with him. And the way he would do it is, at the end of each class, there's a circle. So you do drills the whole class and stretch out. And then at the end, there's a circle, and we'd all play each other and stuff. And he'd be the last one to play. And he would play every single person in the class in a row. And he'd start like from the beginners and work his way up to the green chords and the green and yellow. And so each game was heating up like as he went higher up the ranks. So then like when he got to like the blue chords, he was like revved up, and man, just had some really good games. Some hard lessons, some definitely I mean, I will say my like when I went to Brazil, I went to other capoeira schools and I didn't have any problems.
So before we wrap up, what would you guys recommend to anyone who's looking into maybe getting into capoeira? Either for we'll do a kind of a two-part question. the kind of person who casually wants to do martial arts, office worker, and maybe the kind of person who's a fighter, who's like you said earlier, you kind of hinted towards this earlier, but maybe you could recap it again. If you're a guy like Conor McGregor, you're already fighting, and you kind of want to you're trying to look at a different style like capoeira to incorporate something that maybe your opponent wouldn't see coming, or wouldn't anticipate, because it's kind of I don't want to say it's obscure, because it's not obscure in my opinion, but not
Unorthodox.
unorthodox. There's a good one. It's an unorthodox person. What would you recommend to someone like that?
Well, I think that there are benefits to everything. Um, and the more that you know, the more dangerous you are. I talked about Latif Croder. He used to go to Capoeira in San Jose, and we hung out and we used to work together. And he always wanted me to train him, he asked me a few times to help him with his Thai boxing, Muay Thai. And so um, never actually got the chance to do it, but the fact that he was so dope in capoeira and wanted like additional, this additional understanding, um, it fit right in with, our Kaji upbringing, where it's like, go find out what works, come back and teach everybody and show us like what is going to actually do the damage. So I think that having that vocabulary is essentially very important, especially with just in capoeira specifically, the escapes, and not just the escapes, but the unorthodox way in which you can generate power that you might not necessarily understand if you hadn't played capoeira. So, like doing a shapa and knowing that if you're on the ground, you can, like, if you're trying to get away from somebody, you can do a negativa and still generate some power somewhere. A negativa is just like a duck kind of thing, or like George was saying, the sweeps. All those things are just words in your book. And so if you can figure out how to create a sentence, I might, like I said with Besola, I came out with Thai boxing. He didn't really have an answer for it, right? And so, but if I had to trying to do the capoeira with him, it was like, no, this this dude's been doing this his whole life. He's not. I'm not about to get the best of him. But if I switch it up and be like, okay, he don't know what to do with a leg kick. He don't know how to check a leg kick, and you know what I'm saying. So all those things makes you a well-rounded fighter, and it makes you much more mentally prepared and much more confident in what you can do. And as far as those people that are trying to be um the casual person, I think is capoeira is great for exercise, is great for like the spirit, because you everybody's in there is all happy and singing and clapping and all that stuff. And it's a fun time, and it's very addictive. Like, it's really addicting to get in there and you learn to play the instruments, you learn the culture. It's not just it's an art form, and it's not just an art form in terms of a martial art. It's an art form in lots of different ways. So if you are that type of person that wants to be expressive, or wants to be in shape, or wants to have fun, you're singing songs and clapping and playing and getting exercise and learning how to fight. It's a win-win for me.
Yeah, and I mean it. I think capoeira it takes some time to get good at it. At first, there's a steep learning curve at first, just because physically it's so challenging. But I also wanted to say we didn't get to talk too much about the music, but that is one of the most important parts. Like Eric was saying, that gives you the energy, and I mean your heart gets going, and I mean the adrenaline gets pumping, and it's fun, and it lifts your spirits, and everyone adds to it in that circle. But back to your question, I think basically, any basic capoeira school that you could come across would be great. Eric and I were lucky to catch like Mestre Besola when we did it, in that time when he was, teaching because he doesn't teach as much anymore. But there are lots of schools, and there's always like a young, energetic teacher out there um, pushing it on to the next generation. So in the Bay Area now, there's a lot of circles that happen in Oakland at Lake Merritt and at different places, and they even have like kind of like no uniform capoeira because people get too serious with their schools, like they used to at least, or too kind of egotistical. So it's kind of like just come like in your regular clothes, and they have that now. But I would just say, anywhere really, because it's not everywhere. It's hard to access, um, and the beginning vocabulary is pretty similar from place to place. I mean, there are different styles. I would say just like you would at a Kajukenbo school, go visit, watch the class, see if you like it, um, and go from there. Um, it does take some time though to get the flow, and it is interesting to think about because I didn't really do many martial arts before I did capoeira, like like a semester of taekwondo or something like that. So I wasn't seeing all the
We won't hold that
openings.
against you.
No, thank you, thank you. I won't hold. So I wasn't seeing all the openings. Like Marquis was like blasting me because he couldn't hold back his kicks.
He was also he trained with me at Stellars, and we all went to college together. That's how we kind of knew each other. So Marquis was also, I think, a brown belt at the time. I think somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure it was a brown belt.
And like there was guys in Berkeley that did other martial arts too, so they would see that it was hard for them to hold back when they'd see that opening. Because there's part of it is you do need to get your flow on, but you still need to be doing moves that are making people move and that are meaning something. Um, and so a lot of people who do capoeira aren't necessarily into it for the martial art, I don't think, at least at first. And then you kind of develop more of an interest for that as it goes on. So yeah, I would just say like wherever, like go to your local spot if there's one close to you and check it out.
I just saw a capoeira school in India, which was amazing. I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy.
Well, yeah, and our group, like when we first started, it was just Bay Area, and now like Capoeira Bezoro and Capoeira Narahari are in like LA, Hawaii, Japan. There's a teacher in Japan, Emika, Contramestre Emika. I don't know what her capoeira name is. Um, there's Massachusetts, and this is just our school. Like there's tons of schools. Like I know there's a bunch in Texas, right, Eric?
Yeah, there's two, I think, here in Austin. Um, but I haven't been any because my shoulder was just jacked up. Did you tell them about your name?
Oh yeah. Well, I haven't finished with that. So, well, we figured it out. Like my name wasn't George. So in Capoeira, you do get a nickname. Our school wasn't like big on nicknames, but my first nickname was Menchita because I lied about my name. So I got like a nickname like that. That
There was
one
a
did.
couple people with nicknames.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Superman.
Well, no. What was yours? You had What was yours? You had a.
Mine was Garuda, which was because he was a Hare Krishna, and I always felt a little cheated because I wanted like a Brazilian nickname. So whenever I would go to like a different capoeira school, they'd be like, "Oh, what's your?" They were like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I
Yeah.
had to go through the explanation of like who gave it to me and what all it was. But the funniest one to me was Superman because
Oh, that was the best.
that was so Superman was this nerdy guy who wore glasses, and I swear if you looked up a picture in the dictionary of nerd, it would be a picture of Superman. And he was so uncoordinated, and it was just, and Besola called him that because he was like, I bet you if he took off his glasses, he would turn into Superman. he, he's so off putting in how how uncoordinated he was. So that was the most hilarious. That was the best name ever, I felt like.
Well, there were some other good ones too. There was this guy from Palo Alto they called Bill Gates. I thought that was a hilarious one too. Um, that um, but we didn't really we didn't really have as many nicknames like other schools, like Eric was saying, like Portuguese nicknames, like it. And I mean, our teacher's name is Mestre Beisola, which kind of means like Master Big Lip, or Mestre Sardinia, which is sardine, or Mestre Batata, which is potato. So there's different nicknames. Mine was always George. So, Menchito was like my first little nickname, but it didn't, I don't know, it didn't stick. Because I had George, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
it sounds like you lucked out.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
After all
Super
the
Romeo was a
after
great
all
one.
all the options you just showed me, I think George is yeah, that's not bad.
You don't want to be called Big Lip.
I don't know, mentiras. That's hard because I understand that in Spanish. Everywhere you
Yeah.
go, it's a liar.
Yeah, exactly.
If anything,
Well,
you're-
so he actually said, our teacher said one time, he's like, yeah, we don't do nicknames too much because sometimes people get a bad nickname and then they're just stuck with it forever. So we didn't
but he was
do
like,
it.
but you will be mentira.
Yeah, because he was reading my checks. I wrote Robert Sanders when I paid for classes. So my first certificate, he's like, Robert Sanders. And like everyone's like looking around like, who's that? And I'm like, right here. After I told everyone my name was George. So
So then everyone's like, we should just go back to mentira. We don't know.
yeah. But that's kind of, to me, that's kind of how Capoeira is. Like, oh, okay, well, I'll tell you this. Like, so when we used to sign the checks, like to pay for the class, I'd be like, okay, Basol, who do I make the check out to? And then he'd tell me his name, and I'd be like, who's Ronaldo? And he'd be like, oh, that's my boss, and it was him. So there's always little trickery happening here and there, and that's part of it too. That's what makes it fun.
Well, I want to thank George. Go George, go George. Take mentira for coming out, and thanks to Eric for also coming out and breaking that down. All about capoeira. I may or may not do another episode with another stylist later at future in the future, may or maybe not. But for now, hopefully anybody who listened to this got an idea of what capoeira can be all about and some history and some modern day applications to it. Catch y'all next time.
Thank you.